Hello and welcome to Cozy Creeps, where we bundle up and pretend to be sitting by a cozy fire and listening to spooky tales. My name is Reagan and I will be your host for this chilling story today. Hello everyone. So I'm just going to start from the top and preface this with, as you can probably hear, my voice is borderline shot. My lovely, lovely daughter had a head cold this week. And she was so kind and she shared it with mommy. Love it. We love sharing in this household apparently. And one of the things she shared was her head cold. So I am on the downhill descent from that, but I'm going to sound a little iffy. So if there's some weird pauses throughout, it's because I had to cough. It's because I had to cough or sneeze because it's just yucky. But I'm in that fun, sultry voice phase, so I'm gonna work with it. But it's been a week. I hope everyone else's weeks have been amazing. I hope you all have your cozy blankets and your comfort drink. This week's comfort drink is a sour from a local brewery in my area called Martin House Brewing Company. It's pretty good. My taste buds are a little shot though from being congested, so I can't get the full flavor profile of it, but from what I've got, I've liked it. And it's been one of those weeks, guys. It's been a week, so you know what? I'm gonna do this. And just a preface for YouTube's sake, because this will have a video on YouTube, I am a 30-year-old woman. I'm allowed to have this beverage. Thank you. Have a great day. Anyway. We are going to be covering a super crazy story today. This week is our true crime story. So, with that, let's get bundled up in your favorite blanket, grab your comfort drinks, and let's get creepy. So, to start off, we're going to be talking about the main family of this story, the Sharp family. So we have Sue, who was the mom, John, who was the son, aged 15, Sheila, who was her daughter, aged 14, Tina, who was another daughter, aged 12, Ricky, who was her son, aged 10, and Greg, who was their son, aged 5, had moved from Quincy, California to Keddie, California in late 1980 and rented Cabin 28 in Keddie Resort after Sue had left an abusive marriage. Now, if you haven't caught on based off the few little things I said, we are covering the Keddie Cabin murders, and guys, buckle up. This one is a doozy. It's technically unsolved. Technically. We'll get into that in a bit and you'll see exactly why I am saying it like that and for the YouTubers putting air quotes on. So, let's get into this. So on April 11th, 1981, Sue let Ricky and Greg have their friend, 12-year-old Justin Smart, stay over for a sleepover with them. Now, Justin was the son of nearby neighbors Marilyn and Marty Smart, who lived in Cabin 26. I'm also going to preface really quick that the names are Smart and Sharp. I'm really sorry in advance if I mixed them up. I literally, when I was taking the notes, kept mixing them up all the time. So if I mix them up, I'm terribly sorry. I don't mean to. It's Smart and Sharp. It's pretty easy to swap them up. Anyways. So like I said, Justin and his parents, Marilyn and stepdad, Marty Smart, lived in Cabin 26. Justin had actually just recently moved in with his mom and stepdad after living with his dad in Montana, and so he was kind of new to the area the same way the Sharp family was. Now, Cabin 28 was actually expected to be pretty empty that night. Sheila was going to a sleepover at another friend's house nearby, and John and his friend Dana Wingate, who, if you're like me, you might hear the name Dana and think it's a girl. No, it's a guy friend. I looked, I checked because I was like, ooh, he's with a girl. No, it's a guy friend. Dana is a boy's name too, I discovered. That was just me. But if anyone else had that thought as soon as I said the name, Dana is a guy friend. That's important because they go back and stay the night in John's room. So those two were going to Quincy for the night, and then they were going to come back and hang out in John's room in the basement, like I'd said. And then Tina was actually over at a neighbor's house in Cabin 27, and she'd been watching TV with them until around 10 p.m., I believe. Now, the morning of April 12th, Sheila Sharp comes home around 7:45 a.m. from her sleepover. And when she opened the door, she is immediately greeted with just this god-awful smell. Just horrid smell. Now she enters the house, and When she enters the living room, she said it took her a minute to fully process the horrors of what she was seeing. Her brother John appeared to be bound and lying on his back in the living room floor, with blood just caked all around his face and neck. Next to John was a boy who had been bound and was lying face down, and it looked like John and the boy had actually been tied together at their feet. There was also a yellow blanket that looked like it was covering a body nearby. So Sheila ran to her neighbors for help, and they called the police, and the police arrived. And honestly, this investigation was straight up a shit show from the start. For starters, the crime scene was never properly secured, which you don't have to be a criminal justice or forensics major to know that that is step number one. You secure the crime scene so that way evidence doesn't get tampered with or disturbed. But no, these police officers did not do that. They didn't properly secure the scene, so that made a mess of things right off the bat. And then on top of it, it took several hours for the police to even realize that Tina Sharp was missing. The 12-year-old daughter wasn't there. She was just gone. Even though their friend Justin had told the police that she was gone, she was missing. They just didn't click in their brains until hours later, which, mind-boggling. How did you not click that a 12-year-old girl was gone? Don't understand. Just how can you mess up that bad right off the bat? Now, I do want to give a bit of a trigger warning because I am about to start really describing the crime scene and how the house kind of looked when the police went in for investigation. So if this is something that could be triggering to you, go ahead and skip ahead. Totally understand, but we are about to get into that. So fair warning in advance. So investigators found murder weapons, which, included 2 kitchen knives inside, and one had been used with such force that it was severely bent. Like, bro, that's what we call anger issues. Like, to me personally, that right there, right off the bat, would scream this is a personal murder. Like, this person was so angry that they bent a knife, like injuring and stabbing these people. That's just wild. Now, there was also a hammer, a pellet gun, and a pellet from the pellet gun on the living room floor, and each victim had been bound with medical tape and electrical appliance wires from appliances around the home, as well as extension cords. Now, the cords had all been in the home. They'd been from different appliances around the house, but the attackers brought the medical tape with them, meaning they were planning to bind these people from the get-go. Now, Sue Sharp was found under the yellow blanket that Sheila had seen, and she was wearing only her robe. Her underwear had been removed and forced into her mouth, which again just screams personal. Like, holy crap. Like, what? Of all the things you're gonna do, you're gonna shove her underwear in her. Just such a way to disrespect the body right off the bat. Just awful. Now, they also did find a ball of tape in her mouth, and the underwear and tape were held in place with an extension cord that had also been tied around her legs and ankles. Both Sue and John had been beaten with the claw hammer and stabbed multiple times in their bodies and throats. Dana, John's friend, had also been beaten, but with a different hammer that they did not find at the scene of the crime initially, and then he was strangled to death. There was blood everywhere, splattered on the walls and ceiling, just really showing how much force was going into this murder and these beatings and these stabbings, which is just absolutely baffling to me. Just how much clearly anger was there in this murder. And they did also find drops of blood on Tina's bed. Now, there was also a bloody footprint in the yard, and there were multiple knife marks in some of the walls around the home as well. Now, miraculously, Ricky and Greg Sharp and their friend Jason had been sleeping undisturbed in the boys' rooms and were completely unharmed. That's just, like, thank goodness those children are okay, but, like, what? And here's another crazy thing. A woman and her boyfriend who were staying next door to cabin 28 woke up to the sounds of muffled screams around 1:30 in the morning. Now, the couple did get up and look around, but they couldn't figure out where the screams were coming from, and they went back to bed. You know, instead of calling the police. I don't get, see something, say something, guys. That's something that I've heard many a podcaster say, like, and that's why we drink, and I'm pretty sure Morbid says it too, like, see something, say something, or, hear something, say something, like, just call the police. I'd rather you call the police and then be like, false alarm, than this. But to each their own, I guess. I don't know. It was the 80s. I don't know. Different time, I guess. But with that, if these neighbors woke up hearing these muffled screams, how did the boys sleep through this and not, like, wake up and go out and see what was happening and see the killers? So with that, like, also, why did the killers leave these three boys unharmed when one of them could have woken up and identified the killers? Like, it just, none of it doesn't make sense. Like, why were these three boys left alive? Again, I'm glad they were. I'm not saying I wish they'd been killed or anything like that, but, like, why were they left alive? It doesn't make sense. So the police began questioning anyone who could have heard or witnessed something to help solve the case. And this is kind of when they started to get their first suspect after interviewing Justin's stepdad, Marty Smart. Now, Marty is a bit of a character. He claimed he suffered from PTSD as a result from time spent fighting in Vietnam, which, if that is true, I mean, I don't know for sure if that's an actual diagnosis he had, but if that is true, then I do feel for him, but not a reason to go murder people, but I do feel for him in that regard. If he did have PTSD, that is something that a lot of people struggle with, and it's very not great. So I don't want to say that that was the reason. Like, let me be clear, mental health and mental disabilities are never, ever the reason that someone commits these atrocious crimes. You can have depression, anxiety, PTSD, all of those, and not be a killer. Just saying. Lots of people live with it daily. I live with it daily, and I'm not a murderer. So, just putting that out there. Not a reason, but definitely something to note in his background. Now, on the night of April 11th, Marty claimed that he, his wife Marilyn, and his friend John Beau Bobity, I think I'm saying that name right, I couldn't find a pronunciation for it, but maybe I just missed it, his friend Beau was an ex-con who was known to have connections to organized crime in the area, which, interesting choice in friend, my dude. Interesting choice. We'll leave it there. They had gone to the backdoor bar where Marty actually worked as a chef, and they'd gone there for some drinks and to have some fun on Marty's night off. The group actually had stopped by Cabin 28 before heading to the bar to see if Sue wanted to join them, but she declined. Obviously, she has a house full of kids that she's watching. Like, two of them aren't even her own, so yeah, she's going to stay there and watch the kids, obviously. Now, while at the bar, Marty had complained to the manager that the music was too loud, and the group left shortly afterwards. Now, they came back home, Marilyn watched some TV and then went to bed, and Marty and Beau eventually actually went back out to the bar for more drinks. And while at the bar, the men were seen and reported to have been wearing suits and ties and were acting very weird at the bar. And Marty also told police later that he had had a hammer matching the one discovered at the crime scene that had gone missing shortly before the murders. That's convenient. That's weird. But anyway, to move on, two Department of Justice investigators from Sacramento, Harry Bradley and P.A. Krim, were brought in by the sheriff at the time, Sheriff Thomas, to help with the investigation. Now, while interviewing Marilyn Smart again at a later date, she actually admitted to having seen her husband burning something in their fireplace on the morning of April 12th, which, again, weird. Weird behavior, my man. Now, it's also reported that Marty left town shortly after the murders for Reno, Nevada. And now investigators also believed that there was more than one murderer, which I believe would make sense. Like, they were up against three people, two of which were teenage boys who, I don't know their build necessarily, but I mean, if you're up against an adult and two teenage boys, you might want a second pair of hands to help you. And this is how they believed that Marty's friend Beau was an accomplice to these murders. Also, to make things just even a little bit more weird, the three boys that were left alive initially stated they saw and heard nothing. But Justin Smart eventually spoke up and stated that he saw two men, one with a mustache and long hair, and the other was clean shaven with short hair, and both were wearing glasses with Sue in the house on the night of the murders. He also stated that he saw John and his friend Dana come home and get into a fight with the guys, and that he had seen Tina even leaving her room carrying a blanket, asking what was going on, and that the men took Tina out the back door. Now, 3 years later, on the anniversary of the murders, an anonymous tip would be called in, leading investigators to Tina's missing skull and her remains. Now, near her remains was also found a child's blanket, a blue nylon jacket, a pair of jeans that were missing the back pocket, and an empty surgical tape dispenser, which would line up with what the killers probably had on them, and also lines up with Justin's statement that Tina had come out of her room holding a blanket. So there was a lot going on in this case, and there's a lot of evidence here, clearly, but though there was just so much more to this case, the investigation just kind of seemed to come to a halt at this point, and there was even more evidence that just seemed to go unnoticed by the investigators. The police and the DOJ investigators just seemed to be tripping over each other, and facts and evidence just was slipping through the cracks. Many actually suspect that the police on the case were involved in a cover-up. Sheriff Thomas actually ended up resigning from the investigation 3 months in and took a job at the Sacramento DOJ, and many people view his handling of the case as anywhere from just an absolute disaster, like it was just bad handling, to actual corruption, allegedly. Now, Sela Sharp actually told CBS Sacramento in 2016 that, "I was told the suspects were told to get out of town, so to me, that means it was covered up." That was a quote from Sheila. So, that's coming from one of the girls whose family was murdered. I feel like that holds a lot of weight in my opinion, but again, people could also take the other side of she's grieving and she's holding on to whatever evidence she can get hold of. I can see it both sides, but to me, just based off of everything else that's happened in this case thus far, it holds a lot of weight to me. Now, other strange things happened with evidence in this case, including that the tape of the anonymous tip regarding Tina's remains was found sealed away in case files, just completely untouched by the police department, until 2013, when the case was reopened. What do you mean it was found in 2013 untouched until new investigators came and reopened the case? What? Make it make sense. Make it make sense, guys. But the case was eventually reopened, like I said, by new investigators. The new sheriff, Greg Hagwood, and special investigator Mike Gamberg were the two who came in and headed this new investigation. One moment, I need a sip of my drink. My throat's trying to go out on me, guys. Pray for me. I'm trying so hard. Now, Gamberg actually found a hammer as well that was believed to be one of the murder weapons, and he found it in a dried up pond in Keddie in 2016. It had also come to light to these new investigators that Marilyn Smart had actually left Marty the day the bodies were discovered. She had even provided the police with a letter from her estranged husband reading, "I've paid the price of your love, and now that I've bought it with 4 people's lives, you tell me we are through? Great. What else do you want?" I'm sorry, what? Your response to murdering 4 people is great? My man. Now, that seems pretty obvious. That seems like a pretty simple, straight, cut to the point admission of guilt, right? But even though this seemed just blaringly obvious, this letter was not treated as a confession at the time of the murders by the, at the time, sheriff and DOJ. Marilyn even admitted in a documentary in 2008 that she believed Marty and Bo were responsible. However, Sheriff Thomas actually came out against her, saying that Marty had successfully passed a polygraph test. You know, those things that aren't admissible evidence in court because they can be tampered with, and if you know how to do it right, like as a witness or as the person getting the polygraph test, you can pass a polygraph test without telling the truth. Fun fact, if you know how to do it. So yeah, that's what he was basing it off of, apparently. Sure, Sheriff, sure. Now, it was later confirmed as well that Marty and the sheriff were actually very close friends with each other. So take that how you will, I guess. Personally, I find it a bit sketchy, but again, take that how you will. Now, in 2016, Gamberg actually met with a counselor from the Reno Veterans Administration, where Marty had received counseling after leaving Keddie, assumably for his PTSD. Now, anonymous counselor had come forth and told Gamberg that in May of 1981, Marty admitted to killing Sue and her daughter Tina, but they had nothing to do with the boys. So if he had nothing to do with the boys, who did that then? Because it was clearly at the same time. Just saying. But he said he had nothing to do with the boys, that he just killed Sue and Tina. The counselor also said that this had been reported to the DOJ in 1981, but they dismissed it as hearsay. A confession to a counselor was put down as hearsay. What? I don't know. Allegedly. I'm just going to say the word allegedly throughout the rest of this thing, so that way I don't get in trouble, but allegedly. Cover up, cover up, cover up, cover up, cover up. Cover up. Now, the main theory as to why all of this went down is that Marty, Marilyn, and Sue were kind of in a love triangle. It was believed that Marty and Sue were having an affair, and it's also believed that Sue was counseling Marilyn to leave her husband, whom Marilyn said was abusive to her. I don't know exactly how those two things make sense together. Like, why would Sue be having an affair with this man if her friend's coming to her saying that he's abusive? But again, to each their own, I guess. I don't know. Now, because of this, Marty discovered that this counseling was happening, and it's believed that he enlisted his friend Bo to help him take out Sue. Now, this theory is widely accepted for several reasons. It would explain why Marilyn left the day after the murders and why the boys were left unharmed. I mean, obviously, he's not going to murder his own stepson, like, duh. Especially if he's trying to keep his wife, as noted by that weird letter earlier. Obviously, he's not going to kill him, so he can't kill the two boys with him. So I guess that kind of gives an explanation as to why they were left unharmed, and it does give a lot more context to that note that Marilyn gave to the police. So there's just a lot of reasons why that would make sense. Now there's another theory that some investigators who picked up the case in 2013 believe, and they think that it could be part of an even bigger plot, including a cover-up by the DOJ and Sheriff Thomas, allegedly. Investigator Gamberg alleges that Bo and Marty were actually involved in a drug smuggling scheme that involved the federal government, which is why two special agents from the Organized Crime Department, who were allegedly corrupt agents, were sent instead of agents from the Homicide Department, which is a little odd. Like, why are you sending us these two guys, Bradley and Krim, from the Organized Crime Department when this is a homicide? That's a little weird, but again, there may have been an actual legitimate reason, I'm not sure, but to me that just seems a little off, too. And it would also explain how the two main suspects were able to just up and leave, and even supposedly told to get out of town by Sheriff Thomas. And this could really just explain why the whole case was handled so poorly from the get-go. Like, just, if it was a cover-up, yeah, that makes a lot of sense as to why just all of this just fell through the cracks and why nothing makes sense in this case somehow. So, though the two main suspects, Bo and Marty, have passed away since then, new DNA evidence is being analyzed, and it has actually pointed investigators to other suspects who may have also been involved in the murder. And since they think that this may have been a bigger conspiracy crime cover-up, allegedly, then that would point out to even more people involved in this murder than just the two. Now, Cabin 28, the Sharp home, had eventually been demolished in 2004. From what I've heard, there was a bunch of squatters and just people breaking in, trying to do weird things in the house because people were murdered there. Which, guys, let's be respectful. Don't be weird. Don't be breaking into houses where people were murdered. That's weird. We can be weird, that's fine. Don't be that kind of weird. Moving on. So, though the case went cold hopefully one day we can find out answers for it. Like I said, it was reopened in 2013. I haven't seen any updates on it, so I'm hoping that they are still investigating it and working on it. I would love to hear an update on this case eventually, and maybe there is one and I just completely missed it. Again, I'm fighting through a cold that my sweet little 2-year-old gave me, so hopefully we can find out more in the future. But that is the Keddie Cabin murders. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Cozy Creeps. Right now, I'm still just on Spotify and Apple Podcast. I am also posting these videos to YouTube, so you can check them out there if you want to see my crazy facial expressions and hand gestures, because I talk with my hands a lot, so you will see all that good stuff. I do also have a Facebook and Instagram page, and both of those are under Cozy Creeps Podcast, and that is also what the YouTube page is under. You can check all of those out. And I do also want to start doing listener stories eventually. So if you have any true crime or spooky stories that you want to share with me, go ahead and send them to cozycreepspodcast@gmail.com with the subject line listener stories. And you can also feel free to send me any recommendations that you have for stories that you would like to hear covered in the future. I do keep a running list of stories that I want to cover, and I would love to hear y'all's recommendations and add to that as I go. I do post my new episodes every week on Monday, so just keep an eye out for those. The next one will be coming soon. And with that, let's go bundle up in your warm blanket, finish off your comfort drink, and stay cozy. Bye.